Hello, welcome to my channel, Leisure Break. Today, I am going to explain an American family romantic and comedy movie called The Parent Trap, which was released in the year 1998. The movie begins with many youths coming for an 8 weeks long all-girls summers camp at Camp Walden.
These time, the girls are overjoyed and excited as their camping site is next to Moose Lake. In the next scene, Hallie Parker, an 11-year-old girl from Northern California, is seen looking for her baggage. Hallie's father Nick Parker is a farmer who owns a huge vineyard, and he stays single since he's divorced with Haley's mother. At the camp, Hallie befriends two girls quickly. Meanwhile, Annie, an 11-year-old girl from London, arrives in the camp too. Annie's mother, Elizabeth James, is a famous wedding gowns designer. As she used to be very busy in her work, Annie is dropped at the camp by their family butler, Martin. They share a complicated handshake style between them.
Although, Haley and Annie both look identical in looks, but they are contrary and at variance in characters and nature.
Annie is demure, proper and well-mannered, while Hallie is more carefree and nonchalant. One day, the two girls, Annie and Haley, have a fencing match. But because of the mask they put on, they still unaware of their uncanny identical look-alike. Both the girls are extremely gifted at fencing and both are good competitor. In the end, Annie triumphs, and with her last move, she inadvertently pushes Haley down from the porch, and she falls into the tub filled up with water. And then, Annie quickly apologizes and offers her hand to Hallie to pull her out. However, Haley grabs Annie's hand and pulls her into the water with her. Angrily they take off their fencing masks, but they are awestruck and speechless for a while when they learn that they look identical. Just then, Hallie quickly snaps out of it and insults and bullying Annie. Then, the two girls start argument and almost get into fight physically.
But, quickly the camp counselor intervene and breaks them up and separate them.
Later that night, the two girls get into heated argument and butt heads again over a game of poker. And then, Hallie proposes a punishment that whoever loses the game will have to jump in the Moose Lake on that very cold night itself. That's too without any clothing except swimwear. Annie too confidently accepts the challenge. But unfortunately, Hallie beats Annie with a royal flash. Annie is then forced to jump into the lake. Meanwhile, Hallie and her friends steal Annie's clothes and run away, leaving Annie behind with no clothes to wear and to warm herself. When Annie learns that Hallie tricked her, she vows to take revenge to Hallie and her friends. From that very morning, Annie starts taking her vengeance.
The comical hostility between the two girls leads to a prank war and setting up some traps.
But when the camp counselors fall into one of those traps, that malevolence comes into end. And both Haley and Annie are kept isolate from the other girls. Both girls are told to pack their bags and let them live together in the isolation cabin as punishment. But still, the two girls continue to clash with each other.
However, they become close after when Annie helps Hallie close the jammed window.
Then, they sit down and tell each other about their homes and families. Annie says that she hasn't had a dad in her life since her dad and mother got divorced when she was only just a baby. While Hallie too tells her that she doesn't have a mother since her parent got divorced, and thus, she too lives only with her dad. After learning all that, and also knowing that both share even the same birthday, Annie starts suspecting that all of this can't be just a mere coincidences.
Annie and Hallie have a photo torn in the middle, and both kept half of that photo of their parent.
So, they take it out the only pictures of their father and mother they have respectively to show each other. When they keep together, the photograph was just match, even how it was tear to show that it was the same photo torn into two. So, unexpectedly and miraculously, it turns out each of them got hold on to half of a torn wedding photograph of their parents.
So, Annie and Hallie realize that they are actually a twin sisters. They are surprised and shocked by what they just discover. Their eyes was filled with tears of joy and happiness, and hug each other with joyous. Looking their parents' half-torn picture, they chit-chat and spend hours talking about of their father and mother. At that night too, they can't sleep but talk only about of their parent.
As the end of the summer's camp approaches, they long to know more about their parents.
So, Haley then proposes an ideas. She suggests that they switch places and go back home as one another, impersonating each other.
But Annie afraid and tells Hallie that they will get caught immediately. But Haley insists that they will be able to pull it off as they both look identical and they can learn how to imitate each other.
Moreover, even if they get caught, sooner or later their parents will have to meet face to face. Because of it, the two girls then spend their remaining time at the camp learning and practicing each other's mannerisms. They learn about each other's house's blueprint.
Together, both learn and study about their mother and father.
Haley learns Annie's intricate handshake, while Annie cuts her hair and gets her ears pierced too with a hot needle to look alike Hallie. Time comes for the summer camp comes to an end. And, the twins put their plan into actions.
Haley goes back to London as Annie, and she perfectly impersonates Annie.
And also, she effortlessly imitate Annie's handshake and mannerism so much so that the butler, Martin too can't tell the difference. When, Hallie, who urge and longing to meet her mother and her maternal grandfather Charles very much meet them for the very first time, she hugs them very tightly which even surprises her mother, Elizabeth too. She tags along with her mother to all her work, and she spend more time with her every way she can.
As she waited, when she find in an opportune time, Hallie broaches the topic about of her father, Nick.
She asks her mother that did she remembers him and how they met. Elizabeth is surprised by the sudden curiosity, but, she talks about of Nick to Hallie. She says that Nick was a lovely guy and they met aboard the Queen Elizabeth II, an ocean liner, that sails from London to New York. They were traveling on a ship because both Nick and Elizabeth weren't keen on flying. They were seated next to each other for dinner on the first night of their voyage and that is the beginning of their romance. Meanwhile, Annie, who pretends to be Hallie and goes to California to meet her father for the very first time.
When she meet her father, she is very excited and full of overjoyed.
Actually, she can't believe that she's talking to her father, and so, she even keeps calling him, Dad, in each and every other sentence due to excitement. Annie is greeted at home by Hallie's lovely nanny Chessie and Hallie's dog Sammy. Chessie isn't able to tell the difference between Annie and Hallie, but Sammy seems to have caught up to Annie's charade and keeps barking at her. Annie's excitement soon subsides when she comes to know about Nick's new young fiancée, Meredith Blake. Nick and Meredith seem very close to each other. However, Chessie speculates that Meredith is only after Nick's money. Annie herself grows to dislike Meredith after getting a feel of her selfish ways.
The next day, Nick finally asks Annie how she would feel if Meredith becomes a part of their family. Feigning her ignorance, Annie responds that she would love it.
She adds that she always wanted a big sister and now Nick is about to adopt Meredith. Nope. That's not what Nick means. Thus, he quickly corrects her and reveals that he is actually going to marry Meredith and Meredith is going to be her stepmother.
Left with no choice and forced to acknowledge, Annie responds negatively and screams in French.
A language Hallie doesn't know. Nick is surprised by her behavior but Meredith assures him that it is normal and expected of a child whose father is getting remarried. Meredith then goes to talk to Annie. She pretends to empathize with Annie, but Annie sees through Meredith's charade and cuts her short.
Annie acknowledges to Meredith that she is young, beautiful, sexy and perhaps that's what attracts her dad too, after all he's only human.
But she adds marriage should be more than just sex.
Seeing her charm offensive strategy terribly fail on Annie, Meredith drops her pretense.
She candidly tells Annie that whether Annie likes it or not her father, Nick and she, Meredith will surely getting married in 2 weeks, and thus she needs to get over it. Distressed by Meredith's deviousness, Annie calls Hallie quickly by telephone.
Annie tells her twin sister all about of their father's impending wedding.
And also, Annie persuades her to bring Elizabeth to California to break up the engagement. However, Charles catches Hallie on the telephone booth, and heard all their conversation and plan too. So, Charles forces her to come clean to her mother immediately. Hallie is scared but she reveals who she is and tells everything to her mother, Elizabeth. And, she apologizes to Elizabeth for deceiving her, but, unexpectedly, instead of scolding her, Elizabeth gets emotional and embraces her daughter with teary eyes with joyous. Meanwhile, in California too, Chessie too figures out that it's Annie and not Hallie there. Soon, everyone finds out about it except by Nick and Meredith, who remain unaware of the switch the twin. Hallie convinces Elizabeth to fly to California to meet Nick and fix their relationship but she keeps Elizabeth in the dark about Nick's engagement and tells her that Nick is eager to meet her. Even after all these years, Elizabeth still seems to be in love with Nick. Nervous about meeting him again after nearly a decade, the nervous Elizabeth asks Martin to accompany Hallie and her as a friend. To bring Nick and Elizabeth together, Hallie, Annie, Chessie, Martin, and Charles conspire to have them meet at a hotel in San Francisco. Nick is scheduled to meet Meredith's parents at the same hotel. Elizabeth runs into Nick, but he was with Meredith inside the hotel elevator. She gets suspicious and angrily she confronts her twin daughters. The two girls come clean and reveal that Nick is engaged and getting married in 2 weeks. Annie tells her mom that she can't let it happen, but Elizabeth, hurt, responds that Nick and her have nothing in common anymore. She then continues by saying that Nick seems to be happy with his fiancée. Putting her foot down, Elizabeth adds that she has done what she came to do, and will fly back to London with Annie quickly. However, Nick too is shocked by having run into Elizabeth after so many years. He searches and looks for her throughout the hotel. When he finally notices her, he accidentally falls in the pool in excitement. Just as Nick breaks the ice between Elizabeth and him, Annie and Hallie arrive. They come clean about the switch. Although a bit taken aback by the revelation, Nick gets overjoyed and emotional to see his other daughter after 11 years. Shortly, Meredith too catches up with the development to her dismay. Later that evening, the two girls give their parents a surprise. It is a candlelit dinner, served by Chessie and Martin, on a yacht decorated to recreate their first meeting aboard the Queen Elizabeth II. Nick and Elizabeth reminisce about their past time spent together, both good and bad. It is revealed that Elizabeth left Nick after they had a huge argument. They were then both young, stupid, and had bad tempers. They said hurtful things to each other. Elizabeth expresses slight sadness over Nick not following her after she left. Nick responds that he was not sure if Elizabeth wanted him to. They finally make plans for the girls to spend holidays together but decide against resuming their relationship. Dismayed but determined, Hallie and Annie vow not to leave each other. The two girls hatch a plan. The next day, they wear similar dresses to confuse their parents and refuse to reveal which twin is which as Elizabeth gets ready to leave for London. The twin girls put forth a condition where the four of them would have to go on a camping trip, only after which they will reveal their identity. Initially reluctant, Nick and Elizabeth finally agree to take them on the camping trip, the annual outing Nick and Hallie take before school starts. As expected, Meredith isn't happy with the trip and insists on tagging along. Despite Nick being hesitant, Elizabeth invites Meredith to the camping with Nick and the girls, while she stays behind at the Parker residence. The four then take off and start hiking. Meredith isn't used to the altitude and soon gets tired. The girls take advantage of that and play various tricks on Meredith. When she stops to take a rest, they put heavy stones in her backpack and scare her with a lizard. Meredith has a hard time carrying her bags and the two girls offer to help her. Meredith rudely declines and says that she sees through the two girls' angelic faces. She threatens to make their lives miserable after she gets married to their dad if they play one more trick on her, but the girls continue to prank her. At night, Meredith, who is tired of hiking and dealing with the two sisters, plants a long kiss on Nick before taking a sleeping pill and going to bed early. Later after Nick goes to sleep, Annie and Hallie drag in asleep Meredith with her inflatable air bed into the lake. Meredith wakes up the next morning in the middle of the lake by a bird. She freaks out and falls into the water. Meredith finally loses her patience and angrily gives Nick an ultimatum to choose between her or his daughters. Nick finally realizes Meredith's bad attitude and gets to know that his daughters won't be fine with her. Hence, he chooses the girls over Meredith without thinking much and breaks off the engagement. Although Annie and Hallie are both punished for their shenanigans, they accept it, as they got rid of Meredith for good. Elizabeth apologizes to Nick for inviting Meredith on the trip and breaking their engagement. Nick jokingly responds that he knows that Elizabeth deliberately tricked Meredith into going camping with Hallie and Annie. Later that night, after putting the girls to bed, Nick shows Elizabeth his wine collection. It includes a 1983 wine that they drank at their wedding. Elizabeth gets emotional but tries to put on a strong face. Nick tells her that she doesn't always have to be brave. They get drawn to almost kiss, but Elizabeth holds back. She is almost in tears by the encounter but decides to ignore it. A hesitant Nick then puts the wine back. Later, the four of them are saying their emotional goodbyes as they hug each other. Elizabeth then returns to London with Annie as the rain pours down. Annie is dejected after being separated from her sister and father again. However, when Annie and Elizabeth get home, they find Hallie and Nick waiting for them. Nick and Hallie flew to London on the Concorde, which cuts travel time by half compared to general passenger planes. They explain that they had realized they didn't want to lose Annie and Elizabeth again. Nick tells Elizabeth that he made the mistake of not coming after her once, and he is not going to make that mistake again. Elizabeth is fearful of remarrying, but she yields to Nick's unwavering confidence, and Hallie and Annie look on happily as their parents embrace. The ending shows Nick and Elizabeth getting remarried aboard the Queen Elizabeth II, with the girls as bridesmaids. Please, subscribe for more videos. Thank you for watching.